It always comes to this. More nice shit. Morning guys, back again to do another tattoo progress update today. Where I last left off, I showed off the session I had with Rick here a couple days back. So we did the second pass in here and did some more black, a little bit more color in places, my ditch and all these suction cups. And then, yeah, it's starting to peel, but I'm not really, I don't really have too much expectation of much change in some of these spots because the first pass on this did really well anyway. So I think the black is going to be maybe a little bit better than it was, but probably not a whole lot more realistically. Again, I think Rick is just trying to get all the black to the same level, and some of it was a little bit thinner and or is a little bit thinner, and some of it is a little more solid than other parts. So kind of trying to get to that level more or less everywhere. And it's whatever for me. There's always going to be some amount of time spent, messing about with black, I feel like, when I'm working with Rick. So I'm pretty used to that by now. I had also showed off the 4th session on my back. I've now had the 5th session. Well, just the 5th session for this back piece. In total, in the last year so far, I've had 7 sessions on my back. If you include both of the full pass blackouts. I don't know how many sessions I had on my first back piece / the rework of my first back piece. Most of my first back piece was tattooed multiple times as well. The first version of it was the sword with the roses and the skulls, and then it got all these additions added to it by Lee later. The first version was done by Rick way back in like 2007, and it was based on a drawing I did as a kid. So much like my chest piece and the eye, those were as well. Those were drawings that I did when I was very young. Cleaned up by Rick and another artist, Andy. At any rate, the back piece was tattooed many, many, many times. The first time, and then when I did the blackout, we came in and we darkened all the gray shading to be more almost like blackwork realism. And then it was left for a long time. And I had no real plans of ever doing anything else with it until we got farther into the work over black. And I kind of could see, I think the tipping point for me when I absolutely knew it was going to happen was after we blacked out my chest and my head. And we were able to rework those fairly quickly, because by the time I got around to like blacking out my back, it's not that I don't like the look of blackout. Sometimes I look at it now and I'm like, geez, that looks great. Even like old pictures of my work when it was mostly black, there's times when I'm like, yeah, that was the look. But like if you want to call it a spiritual level or something like that, I'm kind of past that point. I'm on to the next thing. And so the idea of just having an all black back, I think it would have been cooler for me to do that years ago, just for its own sake. But at this point in my life, the only reason why I was rocking that was in order to build what was next. So I'll go ahead and show off the 5th pass and stop clucking about it. See if I can do this. So this is the 5th session, and we did all the background. So I don't know how well that showed things off, but of course there'll be picture and video in here. And the colors that we used 2 separate blues for the background. One of the only things that I was certain of the entire time when we started this back piece was I wanted a blue backdrop to kind of marry into everything. I did say at one point I thought maybe we would put some red velvet in places as well. But I think with the red in the cloak and the eyes and stuff like this, I kind of got to the point where It was like, I think that if we do red in the background as well, it's too consistent with the foreground. I think background should be separate from foreground, and when you do it properly, it can make the foreground really pop off. So we used the sky blue that we've used in parts of my, or blue sky that we've used in parts of my rose sleeve and rose neck tattoos, and I guess the hand as well. And we also used another blue that Terry has always been apprehensive to use because it has not much pigment. It's it's almost like white. It's called ice white, I believe, fusion. And it goes in and it looks almost like a slightly, like, it's got like kind of a white feel to it, but it has a bit of a blue tinge, and that might not come through. You can see here, we got a close up here because I can show this off on camera here. We used parts of both and blended them, so it's kind of like dark to light, and then in some places there's light to dark. It just kind of depends on the area, and of course side to side there's more blue in different spots, because way back when I was having my first back and first front constructed, I've told this story many times, but Lee was building my back piece and another artist was building my front, and the artist who was doing my front, he wanted to be doing my entire body, and so he was doing very petty things like building his tentacles and tailing them off into the back piece. So and when you're the client and you're just kind of laying there, especially when you're having these things done more or less for the first times, you don't really know exactly what area they're in. When you're up on your side, you're just like, oh yeah, I'm experiencing pain on my rib or my side. You know, you don't really know how far back it's going. So this guy was building his tentacles back into the pillars of the cathedral scene, or whatever the hell statue pieces of the cathedral scene. And so now Lee has to work around these stupid fucking tentacles. And every version of my work ever since has been, because we didn't black out everything all at the same time, everything has had to work around that structure. Now, if I had flattened everything, theoretically, all at the same go, it would have made my back and front separate the way that they should be. But because the back piece came, back piece blackout came much, much later in my life, like 5 years later, the way that the new tentacles and their background was constructed was to fill in the gaps, right? So there were gaps in between those spots that the old tentacles used to be that were just black. So it didn't make sense to leave those black, and it would have been actually a little bit detrimental to the new designs to leave that black, because I've found everything you don't saturate ends up costing you in some way. For example, yesterday I had Terry bring up all the light blue to just around the tips of the horns here, because if the only black in the composition is the new black line, then guess what? That new black line gets to stand out better. Whereas if you leave it next to old black, it's still more similar to the old black than it is to a light blue or even a medium blue. And if you look closely here, you can see why we're going to need a second pass right away, because some of that black is stripping through, and that's always going to be the case. I should mention it was a just over 2-hour session, so it's been my shortest one on the back so far. And that's primarily because we've been hitting my back so hard that most of it is healing. And so the only thing that we could really logically tackle was the background. If we had got into any of the foreground elements, it's been worked so soon that, you know, you're going to get a diminished result. It's probably not going to, it's probably not going to heal as well, and it's going to hurt a hell of a lot more. So we decided to give it a week off, and by the time we get there again next week, there's some stuff in there that's been three or 4 weeks. since we've touched it. So that'll be enough that we can get back in there and start fine-tuning everything. But overall, the first pass is done. So there are people who are not members of this page. For example, there's a lot of people who are members of this channel now. I'm very thankful for that. I'm always happy to see another member. I'm not actively shouting about it every day, but it's nice to make a little bit of money for doing what you love. With that said, the guys that have been on my members have seen this thing develop, and when this video goes up, the first session on my back piece hasn't gone up yet. So it's an interesting thing for me always to be that far ahead of my content schedule. My Instagram is terrible. It's like, on my Instagram, the roses don't even have color yet. And I do it that way for a reason. These contents are these platforms are content whores. And it's like, it demands that you post like every day. And so if you're a busy person, you can't be out there doing shit every day that's going to be worth posting. So you kind of have to pace these things out. And I'll always just tell you guys straight up. For the people who want to know what I'm doing more currently, you can check out my members page. If not, it's not like I'm like I personally, I get it. If you don't care to see what I'm doing like that moment, just know that I'm always ahead. And that's where sometimes the Remy reacts and the vlogs can be out of sequence. Any busy person who has a son, a wife, a full-time job, and runs multiple social media platforms and works out and gets tattooed all the time, still trying to find some time for myself and all this, you're going to have some kind of a content schedule. So it is what it is. Yeah. But 5 sessions in to be finished the first pass on my back. I'm pretty stoked. I don't really want to be doing the 60 to 80 sessions that Rick and I are doing on my sleeve on my back. Because even though, like, for example, yesterday we only did 2.5 hours on all that, some of that sucked. And that was all done with Big Mag. So, you know, Big Mag I find packs smooth color but not dense color. But I think with one more pass, that blue will be pretty good. And then, of course, I'm always open to third passes on color on black, and it very well could use it. But with how fast we're moving through all of this, like, I really don't mind talking about third passes on it, because the first pass is the one that takes the most work, and it's the one that takes the longest. Everything we do from here will be like touch, touch, go. When you're building in the color over black, that's when it's the most struggle. When you come in and you put the color over black in the second pass, it's more like color on color, so you get a more direct result, rather than like trying to feed red into black. Now you're feeding red into mostly red, and so it's much more reactive. Also, during the first pass, you're using your black on black layers as well, so those take time. And for the second and third passes, you really don't have to rebuild the structure of the tattoo, so you're just enhancing the color and the highlights and stuff. So you end up saving a lot of time and just kind of flying through. So while we've done, I think, 23 or 24 hours on this back piece so far, if we do the full second pass, I think it'll be more like 12 to 15 hours. And then I don't think the whole thing will be passed 3 times. I think just parts of it, like the eyes and maybe the background and some white highlights and stuff. Similarly to, like, I guess I don't have it to show now, but we did it in my face roses. There are white highlights in here that are third pass, but most of the white is second pass. And same thing when we get the back piece done. I plan on doing a light blue highlight run on all the roses. Just the highlights. I don't think the purple and the red and stuff need to be done again. They may end up being done again. I guess we'll see what Terry wants to do, but I think they're pretty good the way they are. I just think that the highlights should always be the brightest, and I think that the light blue could go again, and it would make the whole thing probably even more striking, and now where it's had time to settle in, especially by the time we're done the back, I think it'll make sense to do those again. And they're not really changing. It's not about, oh, they're losing their color, I need to touch them up. Like, no, they're fucking great. Any reasonable person would probably leave them, but as we already know, I'm not necessarily reasonable, and where I see things can be better, I'll always try and make them better. All right, so my next session, I'm going to be tackling my hand again. This will be the fourth hit on this hand this year, if you're keeping track. If not, don't worry, I am. Mainly because when I say these numbers and I have people give me flippant comments like, there's no way you've had that done that. It's like, oh yes I have, motherfucker. Do not question. It's probably more times than I think. There are parts of me that have legitimately been tattooed over 30 times. Like last year I had my head tattooed 16 times alone. The year before it was that many times on my neck. And then I've been in my neck again another 4 times this year. And I'm talking about another time. So I'm not inflating these numbers. This is legitimate. And it's where I think I have a real claim to multiple world records, really. Probably no less than 50 if we were being real. If Guinness ever comes around. Anyway, I'm not going to blabber about that. That's a story for another day. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Have a great day.